Welcome to the February 2018 meeting of the Houston.net Users Group. You're welcome to join us in person for pizza, prizes, and networking on the second Thursday of every month. Our meetings are hosted by Improving Houston in their office at 10111 Richmond Avenue, just inside the Beltway in Houston's West Chase District. You can check us out for meeting notifications at HDNUG.org, on Facebook, or on LinkedIn. Special thanks to our sponsor this month, IPT Global. IPT Global is an industry leader in advanced pressure test planning and leak detection. With a team of 30 and a strong engineering culture committed to delivering excellence, IPT Global has an environment that encourages learning and innovation. If that sounds interesting to you, talk to them about your next opportunity. You can contact them at info@3ipt.com or visit their website at www.3ipt.com.
Hello, my name is Mark Reynolds. I work at Southwestern Energy as my day job. I take a couple of courses at college, programming, I call that my hobby job. Hobby is something I'm doing it. So that's what the reason I have a secondary job. I have been programming, developing since 78. Yes. In fact, I know that computer, Altair bits. I know what they do. Go back there a long way. In fact, I think my first one ran it. So today, decided this scope is broken. Take a look at C Sharp 7. My son did C Sharp 6 last year. I figured I could do at least that good. I had no idea what C Sharp 7 was going to do. It is a handful. How many of you have already kind of searched, looked for that in couple? I already know his. What would you say is the big thing? Well, that was six. Yeah, yeah. We had a whole update. Anybody else? Wow. So that means you guys will this is you guys going back just a little bit. We're not going to do a whole lot of history right now, but .NET started in 2002, or call it. I believe that the reason it was Visual Studio 7 is because before that it was VB6. I don't know if that's true. I'm going to go with that. Since that time, Visual Studio and has ratcheted every couple of years. As you look at this list behind me here, you will notice an absence in the Visual Studio 13. I presume that was deliberate. I certainly wouldn't have wanted to download that version. I also noticed that 2003, 2013 looks suspiciously bug fixed, being the year after. And if you look at the actual the start, there was a couple of not ratcheting versions of the same one. So looking back, we're not going to go over all of the items 1 through 5, but as you expect, start 1 was the feature. I did not use that one. My first version was 2005. In fact, that was my first movement from CD into start. In fact, if you know me before that, you would have heard me say, before I write it, I'll flip C++ was still my option. I would still be that. Okay, let's see here. Moving on, C Sharp 6. That one started getting a few interesting ones. Elvis operator being one of them. A couple of items that didn't make a whole lot of sense, like using static. That was weird. Doing it late and get caught. That I don't do a whole lot of late, so I just don't understand that. My favorite 4, 3 guys use it? Don't use it at all. You're about to see how to use it because I like it so much. It is the auto property where you can actually assign and property. Why did it take so long? The Elvis operator tool. And then that expression body member, which I looked at about a year ago, who would want to. Now I know who would want to. I'm going to incorporate it. Somebody wants to check the next program that comes along. Now, in truth, they've expanded that and looked at the stuff. Start 7.1, 7.2. So you should never get version 1 of anything. Most of what we're going to talk about tonight is C#7.0. A couple of the things in the later ones are just enhancements or what they should have done in the first place. Then there's a couple of new things, and I want you to talk about that was version 7.1 happened on about August last year. Version 7.2, I know it happened in January. Lab for my freshman, I was video, and when the class started, it was different. So, sure enough, it happened sometime last month. They do that to me all the time. Version 8 happened sometime in the future. Knowable reference type. I'm not sure what that might be. Patterns. Now that was a right thing the academic girl from it. Yes, sir.
Nullable reference type. It allows you, right now, any reference type can be null or it can have a value. But it allows you to declare that this reference type may be null. So what the idea is, it will help eliminate the dreaded null reference exception.
Cool.
Huh? You like null reference exception? Yeah.
Okay. One of the things, first thing in version 7.1 was language version selection. And I was putting that one off, saying, well, I don't know what that is. Why anybody want to do it? But I found something online that says I need to select my compiler version. Sure enough, that was the language selection. Yes.
The other reason to use it is when you have a team that's mixed, some using VS 2015 and some using VS 2017, like the team that I'm currently on, right? You select a lower version so that the people using VS 2017 don't give compile errors to the guys using VS 2015. Or, huh?
What fun is that? They need to upgrade.
Well, I agree with you, but and then you also have, and I had this on a previous project, right? An organization where their build server may be on a previous version, they refuse to upgrade it, even though the team is working on a later version. This helps make sure that you don't use new stuff when you know that you can't use that new stuff.
I like that. I can certainly see the build server. It does mess with the other side because the default is the latest major version. And why not the latest minor version? If it's a really good version to go, why do you have to select it? But I had to select it in all of my people examples because it's okay. The first couple of three, I'm not going to show you the Visual Studio. Screenshot. The first is binary literal, basically the 0 B as opposed to and I know that when I was doing a lot of hardware development, hardware interface, I got tired of the text. I just binary. This was free, And if you look at this number, this binary, if you were to run this, it gives you why? 73 is the 21st prime number. I thought about doing an audio edit right here, but we just digit separator. Kind of cool, especially with binary. I think stick an underscore in there. Hard to read, an underscore. Make it easy to read. You notice that I took the same number, 5, 6, added underscores in there. I did the binary with the underscore. I did a hex with the underscore. Now, if you look really close, you'll see a red underscore. That's because Sharper didn't think that was wanted to tell me not to do it. Because the Sharper I'm using was good up to 7.0 and this is 7.2. Underscore is a 7.2. All the other underscores are 7.0. So sure enough, when you run that, you get the same answer out as far as the computer there. It just ignores the underscores. And as I said, Sharper like that. Here's a couple of other examples I saw. Made it a lot easier.
So is the only separator that you use the
Underscore is the only
thing? Okay.
And underscore is fine.
Yeah, no, it works for me too.
Local function. I was writing Turbo Pascal, object-oriented Pascal object-oriented programming. It was actually pretty good.
It wasn't poop?
It was not poop, no. Now, and eventually became Delphi. I've never actually officially used Delphi. So,
Sure you have. It's called
it is. They have a internal function. I wouldn't even call that a method because it's internal to the method, only visible. But it's kind of cool. Now, I know convert to int is a bad way to do that job. This is illustrating. As you see in this method, I can return get integer 1, get integer 2, and call that method inside. This is a standalone function that is only visible inside of here. So,
But does it capture the context of the body of the method? So it's kind of like an anonymous method, but without the closure.
A variation body. What's funny is
It's amazing how many C# developers have not converted to their love of Lambda.
it's amazing how many developers get out of college and think they have learned programming and they does.
Of course, that.
Look, like
Anonymous method.
yeah, but what it is a method using a body.
only as an anonymous method that you can manually name, right?
Yes. Wait. What? That one?
Well, that's why it says it checks with the next program.
Gets it all on one line. So this one is exactly the same. I can run them both for you. They do exactly the same thing. They develop a product power. If you want to use expression body, you may want to do local. Across there. Oh, yes, because you either do it like that, or you just simply execute this expression. That is, I am presuming that the local is only valid. I don't know.
It's tuples, it's gonna take all night.
So, okay, why would you do it this way instead of using a func or a delegate or an action or something like that?
Well, that little box that just popped up, iterator methods, async. Now, I'm not an async kind of a guy. I could see myself wanting a local function if I were recursing file folders. It's really, sometimes you have to make a method and you're only using that method inside of another method, and that's you can now do that.
I think when you use the delegate, right, you are doing injection. This way you protect, no one can change your behavior of your.
Yeah.
The question will be, is that good thing, right?
Everything has a different way.
Yeah.
How are you gonna mop that?
I would say that you're going to unit test the method, that little function inside the method is just part of that method's code, my opinion. Because you really can't, it doesn't say private or public because it cannot be except private. That's its choice.
And your unit tests really need to cover the public interface. They don't necessarily
Exactly.
need to cover the privates.
Yes.
Or in private?
This is private. This would be the item that I would unit test. Out variables. We've all written extension methods. Probably many of us have written the extension method is null or empty for strings, converting it to an integer. I know I certainly have. This is my standard off the shelf extension method to convert to int. Now, in my standard off the shelf, it doesn't say old style. The to int passes the object, passes a default value. It I check for the content being null because I have found that that is the slowest step, and if I just do that step explicitly, the entire performance is better in general. Nevertheless, we declare an integer result. We then attempt a try parse. The answer comes out as a result. The try parse returns a Boolean. So if the result has, if the conversion worked, result has the answer, you get a true, you return result, otherwise you return default. Standard, I presume most of you know exactly what it was doing. Well, this is a new feature where you can declare the type as you get to it. You don't, I mean, what sense does it make to declare the int result before you get to the try parse? It does you no usefulness, you're just declaring it as a placeholder, which is okay, but this lets you actually declare it, boom, here's where I'm going to use it, let's make it happen. Out int result. And if you get really cool with it, you can collapse it even further. Your return, if it converts, then you'll take the result. Now, let me say that the value of result, the declaration of result, becomes in scope from that point forward, not just inside of the brackets. So as you see in this example, at the very bottom it said return result. I should have said, yeah. It was still in scope at that point. So here we collapse the toInt extension method into one is barely more than one line. And again, I'll show you this in Visual Studio, but this is fairly straightforward and is easier to just present this way. You can actually declare the result with a var. After all, the out of a int try parse is an int. You can declare it with a var, but that makes it less readable, not more readable. My opinion. Tuples. How many of you have used tuples deliberately? Wow. Wow.
A couple of times.
I'm
not a fan.
I knew academically what a tuple was. I got to tell you, about 2 years ago, some people came in that were going to help us interface WITSML. If you know what that is, it's oil field jargon. We're going to interface WITSML into this super nice system. Problem is that WITSML allows you to pass just about any variable in the world over the wire. And those variables have to be named. And think of a drilling rig. You've got this thing on the top that's spinning, that's and it goes down. That thing is called the block. You measure the block height. And believe it or not, coming across the WITSML, it may say block height, it may say BLKHT, it may say BLK space HT, and this company was trying to teach our 24/7 support center what a tuple is and how to set up tuples to convert those things. I swore I would never use a tuple, and then here I am in front of you tonight. In the first example here, and we're going to go through tuples 3 or 4 times before this is over. In this first example, what we have done is declared a set of variables. Think of a tuple as a set. I would call it a collection, but that already means something else. So it is a set of variables. In this example, it is a set of country, capital, and per capita. And that set is set into the variable myTuple. That could just as easily be a struct. It would do everything exactly the same way if it were a struct. Only thing is, you would have to declare the myTuple struct outside of all of this going on. Notice that in this case, we're going to print myTuple.country, myTuple.capital, myTuple.GP per capita. It works just like a struct, except it's a tuple because it was handled as a set of variables. In the second example, we're declaring, whoa, come back here. We are declaring my tuple to be a set and giving it the names and the values. Everything's being done on the right. Now, prior to C#7, you had tuples, but you did not have named tuples. So this is new. In this last example down here, the first one, let's see here. The first one, we declared the set and then assigned the values. In the second one, we assigned the set and values. And the third one, we're declaring the set and assigning by name, much like named parameters in a procedure call. I'm going to show you a couple more tuple here, and then we're going to get into Visual Studio. In this particular one, it is a static, it's internal static because it's part of just a console. It is, this function range is returning a set, a la tuple, of max and min. So it is a type. Again, think of it kind of like a struct. We're going to return max and min from within. That return can return into either a named set, or it can just return into a var. We'll see several other examples in just a moment. In this particular case, if that first shot is the class method that I'm demonstrating, the second one is the main, and you see we have a collection of, or an array of numbers. We pass that array into the range finder. The range tuple comes back, and we can reference that tuple range.max, range.min. Now, the reason that next example is in red, after I'd installed Visual Studio 2017, and then lo and behold, my class started and discovered there's already a version behind, and I reinstalled, installed on top, and it should have basically just overwritten everything and become the latest and greatest 2017. No, it did not quite do that. For whatever reason with the tuples, it decided that it would treat the UI like it was a version 6, even though it would compile and run just fine. So I fought this problem for about 2 days until I realized Visual Studio just installed wrong. If I would install it a third time and pick the repair option, it would be fine. All that's to say, if you're installing and you start getting inexplicable red alerts, try it one more time. Deconstructors. I keep wanting to call them destructors because they're the opposite of constructors, but that's not totally true. A constructor takes, if it has parameters, values, and constructs this class. A deconstruct returns the values from within the class back. Now that is just twisted. Here's the example. Var p equals new. It's declaring the class point using a constructor that defined 2 numbers. Easy enough. I mean, that public constructor there is just old stuff. It took those 2 numbers, saved it internally in some public getters. It probably should have been private, but it's public. Now the next thing right below, there's your tuple. It's a set of variables. It doesn't even have a tuple variable. It's just a set of variables is equal to p. So that class now returned an answer without it saying p.destruct. or P dot values. It's just the class now has a tuple response, and that is the deconstruct. I don't know if I like it. It is what it is. You can have, just like multiple constructors, you can have multiple destructors. In this case, I gave you a destruct that has 2 outs, in this case with 3. Notice that just like an overloaded constructor or overloaded method, the thumbprint of the parameters on the right-hand side will tell you which of those overloaded methods. Here, the thumbprint of the set or the tuple on the left tell you which destructor you're using. Which destruct. I should not call it a destructor, I just do. It tells you which destruct.
Deconstruct.
Deconstruct, I'm sorry, thank you. Thank you, deconstruct. That one I'm still getting used to. I have not tried to use it yet. And finally, discards. Sometimes you get something back and you just don't want it. Now, if you're just doing a simple method that returns, you don't, you treat it as if it's a void, you can ignore it, but in this case, you're getting a tuple or a set back, but I just don't care about those first 2 fields. All I want is that demo distance, that third one. So looking at the first one, we've got 2 variables through the deconstruct coming back to us, and we can print them. Second case, we're bringing back 3, and we're assigning, and dist x is still in scope and visible down here at the bottom if you were to try to reference it. Vertical distance, still visible at the bottom, still in scope. But in this case, the first 2 items in the set we're ignoring. We're telling it, give us the 3-element return destruct, but we only want the third one. I think that's the end of that, yeah. So, looking into this guy, tuples part 1. Okay, is that showing up well enough? You guys can probably see it easier than I can see it. So, here we have a simple class with the destructors, what I just shown you a moment ago. Here's how the guy runs right over here. And I just want to show you that it really does work like I said it does. Let's see here.
Increase the font a little bit, please.
Okay, I can do that better if I don't have to use 4 fingers. I can just should have had this out already. Is that better? Thanks for asking rather than just sitting there suffering in silence. In this first example, the tuple literal. Here we're taking var person, so person we presume is going to be the tuple. It is equal to this set, this named set. It is a true tuple, and you output by the person name. Second example. Here we are getting from get person a string and an int. It is returning name and age, but it is unnamed. The significance here, in this first example, we can write the person.name because it is a named, it is a struct similar declaration. And the second one, it is unnamed, it is original tuple concept. You can only reference the set of variables inside by calling them item 1, item 2, item 3. Being forced into that type of reference is why I've never used a tuple. Generally, if I needed a tuple, I just used a dictionary. Tuple return named. In this case, we are passing back a set that is name and age. And whenever we call that guy, then we are able to reference it by the element name. And I probably I know I probably upset the people that developed this language, but just think of a named tuple as a struct, and you'll basically be able to understand it. The tuple deconstruct we've already talked about.
What's the advantage of a tuple over a struct? Why use it?
Because with a tuple, you're just passing back this set of values without having to declare the struct. It becomes kind of an anonymous struct. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I have one of the rare people that use one in production. I mean, my example is in Swift, but it's the exact same thing. It's, if you know it's going to be a struct you're going to use in multiple places, and you would create it.
Yes.
If you're going to use it one time only, there's no reason to have another level of moving somewhere else and looking at the struct. It's like simple and right there. My example was like an XML parser. In iOS, you have to adhere to the delegate pattern, and so it will respond back with the parse values. So I just created a class that takes in XML and returns a tuple of the results or an error. It's never going to be used anywhere else in the app except for that one example. Yeah, you could have a struct that would be like, okay, here's a string representation of what the element you're looking for, and if there's an error message, but it's overkill to just create a whole struct or a class for that one instance. That's the only example I can come up with.
Drawing on what you just said, I could see where if you had a library function that, say, took full name and returned first, middle, last, I could see that returning a tuple, a named tuple, because you get this thing back, it becomes an implicit struct, but you're not having to carry with this library class that struct that needs to be equally visible and accessible.
Quick and dirty, I guess, would be the...
Yeah, if it's a very simple, if you were returning a database query, don't even think it. But yeah, and also I was thinking earlier today, if I just needed to get 3 values back out of a function, I needed to know what's the answer to the calculation, is the answer valid, and what error may have occurred if the answer is not valid. Well, that's the kind of thing, that's a response object to most of us, and generally should be a response object. But if you're staying within one project and not really crossing project boundaries, maybe you just want to return that 3-element tuple. Maybe that would take care of everything, maybe be a little bit easier on the programming, maybe. The tuple that's declared, such as this, let's go up here to these other ones. This person right here, he is a tuple with, and as you see here, it's a local variable with a string name and an int age. It is fully resolvable with the telesense. Okay. Is that part 2 that I was on there? No. Okay.
Yeah, if you find yourself using it more than once, then you factor into the struct.
Looking at the Microsoft documentation, it says it's a lightweight unnamed type.
Okay.
It seems to summarize what you're saying.
Which is kind of what a struct is.
We have an array of tuple,
No reason you can't. In fact, there's no reason you can't have a strongly typed collection of tuples.
Can you do that?
Because a tuple is a type. And you know, I have yet to find where considering a tuple to be a struct fails the comparison. So yes, you can make a collection of tuples and totally legitimate.
So what about returning a collection of people? How do you do that?
You should just be able to do it by declaring your variable of new, you have to have your tuple type collection. I haven't gone that far, but I looked at it, and from online it looked totally doable. I just did not make an example here. Now I'm going to show you 8 different ways of thinking about tuples. There, in the place that I got this, which is referenced here, and I'm sure we're going to make this available through some means later, they had a 9th one, and I never could get it to work, and I'm pretty sure the guy was on drugs whenever he created it. So we're going to stay with the 8 that I could get to work. In these first 4, the right-hand side is a tuple, the left-hand side is really a set of variables. It's just 4 different ways of doing the same thing. So in this first one here, we have string country, string capitals, double GDP. There is no variable name, it's just parentheses, parentheses. It is a set of variables. It is tuple-ish. It is a set of variables. Those variables did not exist prior to that line. So they basically got declared and used, kind of like that out parameter a while ago, all in this one line. And then sure enough, on the next line down, we can reference those variables, not my tuple dot capital, just capital. So this is a way of passing a tuple to a set. And notice that this, again, I emphasize, the parentheses is around the variable declaration, string country, string capital. That is significant when we get to the next one here.
So that one is a tuple, even though
No, that's not, it's like a tuple.
Okay.
It's a set of variables. The first 4 examples here are sets of variables. And that's my own that's my own definition, set of variables. Okay, this second one here, same variables, but we declared them first and then made them happen. So in the example before, it said parentheses string country, comma string capital. Here we declared country and capital. So again, this is just a set of variables. In the next example, now this gets a little bit better. Here we did var country, var capital, and based on the what's being returned, it's a string double. Well, that's what var does. Everything's working fine. It's just that on the left, you don't have a variable, you have a set of variables. Now this one's just weird. Instead of having var country, var capital, var GDP, we have var of country, capital, GDP. It's exactly the same thing. They just moved the var and made only one of them.
Is there a way to access that set as a whole, or can you only access the pieces?
The next 4, yes. Right now, these 4 examples, they are a set of variables which, after that one line where they are equated, they just become independent, separate variables. Let me pause 1 second just to prove that everything is giving exactly the same answer. You see every one of those lines say the poorest country in the world in 2017 is Mali. Oh, I practiced before I came here. But every line is the same. So that was the first 4 answers. The next 4 are different. And each one of them is a little bit different. Here we're going to declare a tuple on the left. Let's just open it up and take a look at it. Jay, you may remember there was something that I think it was Marcus, but it may have been you that showed you can type all these words and push a magic button and they all jam together with underscores and become your method name.
That had to be Marcus, because I can't imagine doing such a thing.
Well, I found myself.
It would turn my
wanting-
stomach doing something that crazy.
I find myself wanting to do it here, coming up with these method names that I did here. Now, all of these came off the internet, which is why they were called what they are. Okay, in this example, notice country info. That is the tuple. So the tuple type, or the tuple thumbprint, is string name, string capital, double, GDP. So before, without this guy there, we had a set of variables. In this case, we have a tuple with named elements. And the only difference in this one and the one above is the existence of country info between the parentheses and the equals. Now, granted, down here, when you start referencing it, now you have countryinfo.name, countryinfo.capital, because it is a pseudo struct. So here we assigned values to a strongly typed tuple. Let's look at the next example. And I think that was, somebody asked, what's that, was that kind of what you was looking for a moment ago? Okay, yes, sir.
Does the tuple have any methods and properties, and can you iterate?
No, it is a struct, not a class. And remember, struct is just kind of my shorthand definition, but no, a tuple does not have any embedded methods.
No.
Yeah, it's just a set of variables.
And it says they're all public, they all have to be public too, there's no private.
Can't imagine what a private would do for you because you have no methods. A tuple can be any number of variables, but only the public ones are seen. Wow. Did he actually say that? Okay, so here's the next variation. Now here again, we have actual tuples on the left-hand side. Where are we here? Country info is equal to, and it looks just like the set we had before. It's a set of variables, but you put parentheses around it, it becomes a tuple, and country info becomes that tuple, which is a struct-ish thing. Here's another way to do it again. Here, okay, this one is an unnamed tuple. It's in truth, the memory usage is the same. It's just the compiler doesn't have a name to associate with it. It works perfectly good as long as you're using the item 1, item 2, item 3. So this guy is a tuple. It's an unnamed tuple, or the variables are unnamed. That is what you had before C#7. One final example here. In this case, we're using named tuple, but we're referencing it by item 1, item 2. So the old way of referencing item 1, item 2, item 3 still works for named tuples. And again, just proving that I'm not doing smoke and mirrors, it really did run.
Question about that last one.
Yes.
Is there a way, for instance, if your GDP per capita, if you wanted that to be a float value instead of a double, is there a way to define that in this style and not using the previous one where you defined it?
Well, is that an F that you put on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes,
Well,
there's.
yes, not as a number, but as part of the name. So if you scroll up to, I guess, this example 5 or 6, you have string name, string capital, double GDP per capita.
Right.
And then later you can use GDP per capita to describe the number that you want. If you wanted that to be float, besides doing it like that, can you do it using var to describe?
Oh, okay. Let me just control Z a few times and see if that gets it done. Okay, yes. Let's take a look at some of the options here. I'm only looking at the last 4. So in this case,
Should be able to change double the var and then maybe
Yeah, you can definitely.
put an F at the end.
That's what I was looking for. Yes, that's how I was trying to answer that. I think this next one actually does it that way. No.
So if
Yes,
wanted
you
it,
can do that.
The only way to do so is put an F at the end of the number.
Basically, yeah. Somewhere you gotta tell it there's a float because it's gonna be a double otherwise. Now, I don't know what your application is, but,
It was a hypothetical.
okay. I was just gonna say, for the next program that comes along, you might want to declare it float clear and obvious because you wouldn't normally expect that. Okay. And I assure you the tuples are the biggest, I spent more time on this presentation than any presentation I've ever done. And most of it was getting the Visual Studio right and getting the tuples understood. Okay, remember our range method from earlier? And just showing you I really did get it working. It's no longer in red. And I think there might have been a question about my point method here and my discards. Do we still have a question on the floor? I don't see any answers there, so we're going to go on. I am now an hour into this, and I think I'll be done in about 20 minutes. Pattern matching. This one, it took me a while to study it and say, what the heck are they doing there? In this example I'm showing you right here does not use pattern matching. This is something if you wanted to get the controls off of your WinForm, for those of you still using WinForms like me, I'm doing a for each through all of the controls on the form, but I only want the buttons. So the way I do that pre-C#7 is I would say button equals control as button. What that does is if control is a button, BTN becomes that value. But if control cannot be cast as a button, then it becomes null. Now if you try to do parentheses button parentheses control, now you're opening yourself up to having errors. When you do it with an as, you eliminate those errors. But BTN will only have a non-null value if in fact the control is a button. And then you say if it's not null, then do something with it. With the pattern matching, you don't use as anymore, you use is. And to my knowledge, this is the first time that an assignment happens on the right-hand side of a expression as opposed to the left. In this line, if control is button, then make it BTN. All in one fell swoop, if the control is a type button, then make it land in BTN. BTN is declared and takes the value on the right-hand side of the is. And you can use that same thing in a switch statement. How many of you guys know FizzBuzz? Okay, about half. In this particular iteration of FizzBuzz, you have a series of numbers 1 to 20, and if the number is divisible by 5, you replace the number with fizz. If it's divisible by 3, with buzz. So what you're doing is counting 1, 2, buzz, 4, fizz, you know, kind of weird, but it's a programming exercise. Notice, however, switch of the object, if it is a string, then make it S, and S will be in scope for the remainder of this case statement. Put it in S, and if S has super or bold, then go Eagles. But the next one's even more fun. If the object is an integer, and go ahead and put that integer in N while you're at it, when N is divisible by 5 and 3, you got your FizzBuzz. So let's see what that looks like in real life.
Yep, that's pattern matching, because I don't see an is there in the case name.
I know it. That is, in fact, let me hit page down one more time. It has two constructs. It is the is expression and the case causes. But yes, good catch.
I was looking for it.
Yeah.
Question.
Yes.
So can you go back to the previous example? So instead of creating like so many ands and as, can you use the underscore here?
Not sure where you would use a discard to get to the.
You know, like in the lambda expression, instead of creating a variable, we just use underscore.
Oh,
If you don't care about the value.
you just want to know that it's an int. I think I saw an example when I was getting ready for this that did that. My inclination is to say, yes, you can do it. And I believe this was either 5 minutes or 5 days ago, I don't remember, but I think I saw that and said, well, this other case is more interesting, let's do it. So, I mean, this pattern matching is new to me too. It's kind of cool. So for our example over here.
So pattern matching is more of an architectural pattern than it is a syntax. Because what we're doing is turning it on its head and saying instead of testing for null and instead of casting and testing for null, we're testing the whether it matches a pattern. So it's an architectural pattern, not so much just a syntax.
Does it match a type pattern? And let's assign it if it does.
Or does it match a true-false pattern?
You can do is Boolean.
Well, in the case statement, you did when, and then presumably that evaluates to true or false.
Okay, a case int in. First off, it's saying is this object an integer?
Oh, okay.
Now, having established that it's an integer, we only care about it when it's divisible by 5 and 3.
Okay.
Yeah, putting a when on a case makes me think that somebody would prefer to be working in SQL.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
It's like doing two levels of if-thens in there.
Yeah, but in that case, you're not even making the assignment to the thing on the right. You're assigning a variable in the middle of your expression.
Yeah.
You know, I can see the usefulness of that, but the clarity of it.
It sounds like it's only really useful if you're working with like old collections, ancient code bases.
I don't know. I've got a couple of examples here.
I mean, there's new code bases that are crap, so you know, there's that.
Let's see here. Pattern matching part
Well, they
1.
don't believe in generics.
Okay, in this pattern matching part 1, I should in this case here say test. Let me fix this. You'll see why in a minute. Basically, we are doing a pattern matching on an object. Now, I don't know if it makes sense to think about pattern matching on other than an object. I can't think of an example where it would, but here we're saying, is that object null? Is that object a double, not a number?
I can see that, and that's not an object.
Yeah. Is it a string that's test? If O is test. So here we're actually comparing to an actual value.
So it's like a double, if it's a string and if the string equals test, then it's true?
That's right. So here's our code down here. I'm throwing various expressions at it. And when we push run, we get various results. O is test, O is not blank, O is value, but that was not a number, and so on. I spent a little more time on example 2. How many of you guys still use WinForms?
WinForms must die.
Yes, long live WinForms. You owe me twice now. Hey, 60 years of awesome. Leave me my WinForms.
Does it work with mapping?
Yeah. Okay. So in this example, I knew he's going to do that at some point tonight. For those of you, when HDNUG had its first session, Jay was there talking something about mapping, and
It wasn't about Mappy. It was something else.
That's something else. Okay, staying away from mapping. Here is a form that's got 4 buttons, a combo box, and a list box. In behind that first button, which is called Isolate Buttons, and if you permit me, I'm actually redundant here, and I just want to get rid of this block of code because you're going to see it again anyway. So here I'm making a string builder. I am looping through the controls. So each control is a different actual control. If the control is a button, then I'm going to append the button name to my string builder. Yes, sir.
Wouldn't it just be easier to say this that controls of type button?
You could do that, but I'm trying to illustrate my pattern matching.
I like mine better.
And running this code, but does it work with mapping?
No.
Check the first one, I get my 4 button names back, not in the same order as we saw them, but a collection doesn't necessarily promise that anyway. In my second
If you
example,
did of type, you could do order by name.
if I wanted to demonstrate link, I could. Would it make you feel better if I sorted it? No, you gotta find something else. Okay, what's this next one here? I can't see it. My own access all controls. It's a blur here because of the reflection. Access all of them. Here we are, right here. In this dice, it's fine. We're almost done here. In this case, we are again looping through the controls, but we're doing the switch. If it is a button, I'm making XYZ, and I'm going to append the name of XYZ and the XYZ's name. So think about that. The name of XYZ should be XYZ. An XYZ name should be the name I assigned that button. If it's a list box, we're going to do the same thing. If it's not, which in this case would be a combo box, then we're just going to say we don't know. And we've got our unknown there, we've got our list box, we've got our 4 buttons. So the significance here, again, we're going through a collection of controls. So the controls is the base object, and we're doing pattern matching against derived objects, button, list box, or otherwise. Let's look at the next example here. The old approach, that's what I was deleting there a while ago. That's where you did it as button. And I showed these 2 examples here. I did the button equals sender as button. Did everything there. Now, ReSharper's not currently on this computer, but as soon as I got done, ReSharper started objecting. It says, dude, why don't you make it a pattern match? So I said, sure, make it a pattern match. It says, dude, why don't you make that a string literal? So I just show those for the humor of ReSharper. Here we go with the old approach, and we were looking for old approach is a button. So it took the sender object, did it as, checked it with an as, and went on. Finally, we've got our FizzBuzz, which is this last button. Basically, all I'm going to do is I'm going to loop from 0 to 19, and I'm going to get the answer to the FizzBuzz. So 1 should be 1, 2 should be 2, 3 should be buzz, 4, fizz, fizz buzz, no, buzz again. You get the idea. Let's look at the code. Same thing you saw just a moment ago. We're never going to have a string passed. We're never going to have anything else. Just those it cases.
Wouldn't it be more efficient to say when nmod 15 equals 0 then fizzbuzz?
Yeah, but the definition of fizzbuzz was always if 3 and 5 is fizzbuzz, but yeah.
But mathematically, that would be
And
identical.
mathematically, it would be, and in fact, we could see it right there, 15 and 0 for that matter, but yes.
You could do Fulford too, and just take out the whole
Do-
fizzbuzz line, right?
What was that?
Through and not have the return?
Yeah,
Just have it append?
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It's funny, we're not trying to optimize the fizzbuzz programmer test, we're trying to demonstrate the pattern matching.
But I think we're using a couple of additional cycles that we could recover.
We could,
if we
yes.
just were a little bit more optimized in our code.
But I'm gonna be hooking it up to Mappy anyway, so.
Well, then all optimizations are out the window then.
Yeah, okay. Joe, I'm gonna get you for that.
Can you use the when, like, so say you pass in an object and you know what type it is instead of like passing in an object. So like say object is int instead of object though. Can you do like just case when, or do you still have to do?
I believe that would not be pattern matching, that would be just the switch case, and I believe that wins are viable. Do you know, have you ever winned on a case? I don't know. I've never seen a win on a case until I was researching this, so I don't know. Okay, the rest of this is going to go fairly quick. Ref returns and locals. Basically, it's the address way of looking at it from C++. And I hated C++ when C++ was the rage. I still hate it. I don't see a lot of use for this, but it is C#7, and I'm going to show it to you. Over here, the do something is very simple. It's got an out and a ref condition. The ref out is where it takes a value and returns it through the parameters. Ref is when it returns the address through the parameters, or actually passes the address through the parameters. So, in the first case of X, when we come into it, out X doesn't, I know I could do the out var X here and be perfectly good. We don't care what X is coming in. We are getting X back from the method. Now in the case of Y, we could pass a variable for Y. We could pass it 3 and ask for the next prime number back in Y. Don't know why you'd want to, but you could. So here we are receiving the address of this Y. We're going to do with Y what we choose, and that reference counts. So in this first case, you would hope after doing a do something that X is 10 and Y is 20. And in fact, if we run it, we find that it is. In the second case, now it's getting a little bit wild. Hold on to your hat as we go through these refs. We are passing to do something else ref Y, which means the address of Y. Over here, we're receiving the address of Y. We're jacking with Y. We are now declaring a variable Z by reference to Y. So now the address of Z is equal to the address of Y. And we're going to return the address of Z.
Not today, Satan. Not today.
Why would you do that?
I prefaced this whole thing by saying this is just weird and I can't imagine why, but it's part of C#.
These are like all the reasons why you don't use C++.
This is why, up until 2002, I said if I have to do C++, I will flip burgers first. And if I have to use these refs, it is a close cousin to that burger.
The obscenities that pointers led to were supposed to be
Yes.
banned.
You know what's going to make it worse? That ref is probably captured by a closure. And if you're doing asynchronous stuff.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God.
It's called non-functional programming.
Which is C++ in a nutshell. Okay, never mind that we all agree we don't like it. I promised to show you what I learned about C#7. Here we pass back the address effectively of Z.
Do this, I will beat him.
Yeah.
Here we see the address of Z coming back. Now, of course, this Z and this Z are different Z's. But you see that Y and Z are both 40, and if we add 13 to Y, both Y and Z get 13 added to it. Okay.
On the other hand, it would really be fun to mess with this and like screw up like a fresh out of college dev's head. Because can you imagine the bugs that this would cause?
To screw up a doobie, all you have to do is in your for loop, do a ++I instead of I++. That will jack with them every time.
It's messed up. It's so wrong.
So Y and Z became pointing to each other as
They occupied the same address.
They're pointing to the same place.
And what point did that happen with the?
It happened right here, ref bar Z equals ref Y. And I guess I should have called that A and B and C in here and Z and X and Y over here, because the X and Y is on the left and the X and Y is on the right are totally separate things.
No.
Okay.
Just don't do this.
Yes. As a rule of thumb, not only, I don't do refs and don't go with girls that do. So.
What about boys?
And expression-bodied members. We decided that we liked them so much before, let's make them work for constructors and destructors and getters and setters. In C#6, I believe it only addressed the public string, these guys down here at the bottom. Now you can have the constructor as an expression, the destructor, and the gets and sets.
What about the deconstructor?
Yes, because, drum roll please, the characteristic of expression-bodied members, that first bullet you can argue with. The second bullet, it's got to have a name, a return type, and a return expression. So basically, it's got to be a function. Now, this property, I kind of like that because I find myself periodically wanting a sub window to show something on the master window. Remember, I'm in WinForms kind of guy most of the time. So I don't want to expose that text box property by making make a property to set and retrieve it. So I would make a public property get textbox.text, set textbox.text. I could see that being done with expression body and, in my opinion, looking a little bit cleaner. In the case of the constructors, at first I thought, why do that to yourself? But if you have overloaded constructors, and basically each one varies by the thumbprint of the parameters, if they're simple constructors and you could do them as an expression body, putting them all one row below the next one would let you visualize how they differ instead of having to really extract that information. And we're moving fast now. Throw expressions, yeah, it doesn't have to be on a line by itself. You can put it on a line with something else. Again, I think the only advantage to this is jacking with the new developer.
That makes sense.
The async method, which, as I said, I don't do, a co-developer or a colleague of mine said that this is not new. I'm telling you that the blogs say this is new. Instead of returning do sync, await, get result, you can just simply return, await, do your thing. And if you're not actually returning a value, you can just simply await this async thing. And that's more than I know about the subject. Defaults as a value. It took me a little bit to get my arms around this guy. It's kind of nice if you're dealing with optional parameters. And yes, we know the default integer value, if you declare int I, that value is 0. In C, it became some random number, but in C# it is 0. That is the default. No doubt about it. But you can use it in ways I would never do int I equals default, because I is already default, and that is only adding a CPU cycle. In the case of a string, that default is a null. I often would rather it be an empty string. So I still set equals string.empty. It's debatable whether I really need to in most of my code. I wish, I just did a screen capture of this. Method, any method, don't think of method as a reserved word here. If you want to call a method, get person or something, and normally the get person would be the record ID, you could pass default. Now it knows that method is expecting an integer, so it passes the default for the integer. So if you just want to, if you don't want to really think through what is the actual default, is it null in case of a nullable int or 0 in the case of an int, you can just say default. You can set default to a type. You can return default, because if you're returning whatever you're returning, whatever type you're returning, you can return the default type of that. And, you know, if you've just try-catched an error and you've logged the error and you have to exit out of the method and you really don't have anything to tell anybody, you can either put default, or you can go back up to the top and say, now what was my type, and was it a nullable type, you know, and all that fun stuff. Non-trailing named arguments. Whenever I'm doing any complexity at all, I always, when I'm calling a method, I name my arguments. That would be like if the method is create full name, and I would pass the parameters first name, last name, middle name, then I would say first name colon the variable, last name comma, last name colon the variable. Those are named arguments. Up until now, you had to use all of them named in order. I haven't tried it, but supposedly you can do all the named and then do the rest of them without names. Don't do that. If you're going to pass named arguments, name all of your arguments. You know, I'm just keep making a mistake. So we've all dealt with public and private, and if we're careful, we've dealt with internal and protected. And if we're getting really off on the deep end, we've done internal protected. And so just to keep us honest, they gave us a private protected. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Questions? No, I could tell everybody's starting to wind down about 15 minutes ago. So you have the attention span of about an hour and 15 minutes.
How do you pause a string into a tuple?
It depends.
How do you pause a string into a tuple? Just like changing pausing. It's not when you have integer string integer, like then pausing to the int.
Yeah. If I were taking a string and breaking it up into first name, last name, then I would be calling a method with the string, and I would return the tuple.
how is that function defaulted? Because if you download from the web service, right, you turn value in JSON, right? So the tuple would look exactly like JSON format.
Right.
So you can,
I don't know. But I did think of something when you were saying that. I don't know the answer here, but there's something I forgot to tell you. When you're using tuples, even though I'm running a Visual Studio that is C# 7.2, I still have to add the NuGet package system value tuple. So, if you think you're going to use tuples, don't forget to add system value tuple. Okay, once again, question? Yes, ma'am.
Can you compare a value with default, like for example, if as equal to default?
Well, the default for an integer would be 0.
So that's when you just.
So yeah, you can, I don't know, you could say something like if I equal default.
That's what I.
Can you use that pattern matching and say if I is default?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I looked it up and it said that you could.
Oh,
It
wow,
also said that
an
you
overachiever.
I was looking at, because I was looking at, you could like define the default for your class, like you can change what it was, but no, like all the classes are still just, the default's just gonna be null. But that'd be cool if they were able to add that, because I think that would be valuable. But
Default, I'm still warming up to.
I mean, I don't see much of a value for it until you can do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
We have used it quite a bit before. It's on the, like, when you have generic methods, and you want to do assign something, but you don't know like what
Yeah.
to mean. And you want to do assign and do comparison. So there's this case, I can,
That makes sense. And it all goes out the window when you go to nullable references.
Probably. Yes, that's why we have the language selector for the old build servers. Well, apparently I made Jay mad. He got up and left, so. Anybody know what we do now?
Here's Jay.
I thought I made you mad.
No, he just didn't want us talking to him about mapping anymore.
Thank you for joining us for the February 2018 meeting of the Houston.net Users Group. Our next meeting will be on March 8th at the Improving Houston office located at 10111 Richmond Avenue. If you happen to be in Houston then, or on any second Thursday of the month, we'd love for you to join us.